Hello and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, helping everyday runners fuel better, run smarter, and recover faster so you can reach your full performance potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, dietitian, fitness coach, and a fellow runner too. As the owner of Stephanie Natchuk Performance Nutrition, I've spent the last 10 years helping runners learn to fuel their bodies, level up their running performance, and establish healthier relationships with food and exercise. If you're ready to reconnect with your love of running, then let's get started on today's episode. All right, so before we get started with today's episode, I wanted to invite you to check out a few great free resources that I created just for runners. To get them, all you have to do is click on the link in the show notes or visit www.stephanienatchuk.com. If you visit my website, there's a little pop-up box that comes up and it'll prompt you to enter your email address, and these guides will be sent right to your inbox. The first guide is my fueling guide for runners. So in this resource, you'll find my top fueling tips for runners, as well as some specific meal ideas for both your pre and post-run fuel. If you've been struggling to understand what to eat when to support your running and just figuring out what those meal ideas, what those meals look like, what kind of foods you should be including before versus after you run, what the difference is between pre and post-run fueling, then this guide is exactly what you need to get you started on the right path. The other guide that I created is my strength training guide for runners. So this guide includes both a PDF resource, has some tips, guidelines, and links to my YouTube series where I actually walk you through all of the exercises in the program. This is a great beginner strength training guide for runners who want an effective but efficient full body workout that helps support the key muscles and movements you need to run stronger and injury-free. So once again, both of these guides are available together. I have them put together as a little bundle for you. You can just click on the link in the show notes or go over to www.stephanienatchuk.com, enter your email address just the one time, and both of these free guides will get sent to your inbox right away. I hope you enjoy these resources and find them helpful in supporting you and your running. And now let's get into today's episode. So welcome to today's episode where I am super excited to be sitting down with one of my just recently graduated clients, Laura Lutes. She is here to share her fueling story, how she learned to really start to think about eating and nutrition as a runner for her goals in a different way. And I thought she would have some really great insight and some tips and tidbits to share with all of you about her process in just learning to fuel her body better. So thank you so much, Laura, for agreeing to come on the show and share all of your wisdom. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. I think that's what you're supposed to say.
Yep.
No, I'm excited to chat for sure.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you for making me feel like I absolutely have to do this and I wasn't allowed to say no.
Steph is not that scary, you guys. You can say no to her.
Yes, you can. You can just not book. You can just not book it. Yeah. So I'd love to just have you sort of set the stage for us, for everybody listening. How did you get into running? What's kind of your background with running and other sports? Because I know you've got other sport background and stuff like that. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be a runner.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely mostly would never have called myself a runner. Definitely was like the team sports kind of girl. Volleyball, basketball, soccer, all through elementary school, which I don't know if those count. I feel like that's just a bunch of children just running around in circles, falling over sometimes. But did keep with the basketball. So played basketball through high school, was in swim club all through high school, did triathlons, all that kind of stuff. I feel like I did cross country once, maybe when I was a kid. There was an atrocious photo of me crossing the line, probably grade 7 or grade 8, and I looked like I was dying. And that's kind of my only memory of running back in the day. It was a great look for me. But I think kind of my story, I feel like a lot of people start in team sports and then, you leave team sports and you end up in these situations where you're like, well, now what? I've got to motivate myself somehow.
Once you finished school and got out of university and
absolutely. And I feel like it's a thing. I mean, personally, I never thought about it. we just played sports. Like that's what we did. That's what I love to do. And I definitely didn't think about what I was eating, like ever. I kind of just ate everything and anything, and that was fine. And I'm fairly tall. Like I'm just under 6 feet. So I'm like a tall, skinny girl. Never thought about that either. Went through life getting like the compliments, like, "Oh, you're so skinny." I was like, "Great, thanks." But like other than that, I was like, "Well, this is a good thing," but like didn't really think about it. And then, there was a period there. So I'm from the West Coast, but I was living in Ottawa, and I actually started running home from work because partly I was like, I just want to get home from work faster. So it was about 2 kilometers, 2.5 kilometers, and it was just a grind. Like every day was a grind, and I never felt like I was improving. And I mean, probably because I wasn't like, I wasn't really giving myself space or time to improve. I was just like, get home as fast as possible. So that sucked. Like, I feel like I still have some PTSD from one and only like hill on the route that I had to go up. Because it felt so hard and I kind of hated it. But then during pandemic, I'm sure that's a sentence lots of people who right now have said.
Enter COVID.
Yes, then COVID happened and we all had to rethink our lives.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, so then my partner at the time, who was definitely not a runner, was like, I want to run. And I was like, okay. He was like, I'm going to do this. It wasn't a couch to 5K, but it was very similar. And I was like, cool, like, I'll do it with you. And so we started running together. And I did start realizing that those like puke inducing, like 2.5 kilometer runs home from work had actually done something. And when you slow down a little bit, it actually felt really good. So essentially, that was kind of it. That was like August 2020. And I think in the past, when I tried to run, everyone says, like, oh, like you just get to a point and then you love it. And I was like, that's not true. Like, that can't be true. And then I found it is true.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah. And I really don't know when it happened. Running in Ottawa I love running in Ottawa. It's very flat, which I didn't really think about until we actually moved back out west. And we live in North Vancouver now, which for anyone who is not familiar is like essentially on the side of a mountain. So I remember our first 5K out here, like we were running sub 5 minute kilometers regularly. Then we got here and I was like, oh, I hate it here. This is awful. I'm never running fast again. Which, to be perfectly honest, I was running too fast. Like I shouldn't have been running that fast every run. Like I didn't know. Like I didn't know better. So maybe moving to North Van and having to run up the side of a hill constantly was actually a good thing for me. But yeah, it's kind of stuck. I've been going through, I mean, we've talked about it in our sessions, like dealing with injuries and kind of that slow learning, like, oh, you have to eat maybe slightly differently. Oh, you maybe have to run easier effort than you are. And like maybe just like running your guts out every time isn't the best option. But yeah, so I don't know, running seems to have stuck. I really want it to be a thing I can do, for a long time. I think that right now is my main goal, and just still navigating like how much I don't know, or like how much I think I know, and then being like, oh, okay, there's still
And
more to know.
well, absolutely. And I mean, always, always, always with everything in life, right? Like even once you have years of experience and tons of training and education and all that great stuff, I mean, there's always an evolution and more to learn. But I like that you specifically pinpointed on the problem with doing all your runs too fast, because I think that that's something that a lot of people maybe end up missing in this conversation is we talk about you have to slow down, you have to slow down, you have to slow down. And we say it all the time, but the question that a lot of people probably have on their minds is, well, why? Like, so what? Who cares? If I
Yeah,
if I like
1000%.
if I like pushing myself and love the feeling of giving every single run this sort of 110% effort, and I love the feeling that I get of like I'm going to die at the end of every kilometer, because I mean there certainly is a sense of accomplishment that we get from completing a hard workout, right? Feeling like you really gave it your all. We do get a deep sense of good feelings and accomplishment and hard work from running that way. So it's a very attractive place to be. And there's really no question about why that is. However, right, then it comes back to, can we maintain that volume or that intensity without burning out mentally or getting into all of these injuries and having all of these physical problems start to come up as a result of that training practice. So while it feels good in the moment and it's definitely serving a purpose for us in terms of our confidence and you know, how we feel about the workouts that we're doing and really feeling like we're giving it all of our effort, there is going to be a point where it's no longer maybe serving us in a positive way.
Yeah, 1000%. And I think the thing, and I know it's not just me, but it's like the draw for a lot of people for running is like, oh, you just put on your shoes and you go. And you don't think about it. And it's
Yeah.
like, I feel like that worked for us for a long time. Like that worked for me for a long time. I feel like my partner Chris is like, he can just do whatever and it's like fine. And I'm like, oh, now my ankle hurts, or like, oh, now my glute hurts. It's like, oh, my whole right leg is fucked now. Like, it's not, obviously, but it's like,
Yeah.
why not just add in all the joints?
Yeah.
And my problem too being, I just get really excited, and I'm like, yeah, let's go run to Norvan Falls. It's like, no, don't do that. Like, don't do that trail run. Like, you A, are mostly a road runner, and B, your longest run ever was like 14 kilometers a year and a half ago. Like, that's not a good call.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's also my problem, is I end up in these situations where I've added so much elevation, or like hurt my knee recently. I was doing really, really well. I was staying so consistent with my running, easy effort, only increasing a little bit, eating really well. Felt like my nutrition was finally on point. I just finished with you. And then I was like, I've never done the gross grind. I really kind of want to do the gross grind. So we did 2.5 kilometers with like 800 plus elevation gain. We went slow, did it careful. But what I didn't think through was that the previous week I had done like my longest run, like 11.5 with like 400 meters elevation gain. Everything felt good until a week later it didn't. And, you know, my physio was always like, yeah, it's not always in the moment that injury, like it's in the moment that maybe something happens that like is going to be an injury down the road, but it feels fine at the time. And then it's like, you know,
Yes.
you're hobbling down the stairs at the SkyTrain, like to work, like what? Why does my knee hurt all of a sudden? And so
Yes.
that is the kicker for me too, is remembering like, just because it feels good right now and you think your nutrition's on point and you know you did everything right, it's like, don't forget that like you're not running up the gross grind, but your legs still have to do the work.
100%. I did the gross grind once. My now husband, but for oh my gosh, almost 15 years ago, that we were you know, definitely a lot younger at that time. We had traveled to BC and we had done that. And I, of course, knowing nothing, like I don't even know if I was a dietitian yet when we did that. I might have been, but I actually don't know. We did that trip and I ate a protein bar right before starting that. And I was like, honest to goodness, I was dry heaving on the side
Yeah.
of that mountain. It is so hard. And,
Yeah.
you know, of course, knowing nothing, and I mean nothing about fueling properly for like activity and also being completely untrained. I definitely wasn't a runner at the time. Like I need to revisit the gross grind one day and give that a redo. I mean, of course we made it, like we finished and we climbed that
Yeah.
stupid mountain, but that's the closest to vomiting I've ever been during exercise.
Well, and you're like, how am I going to vomit right now? It is not that, we're not going that fast.
Oh, and there's
Like, you know.
people like passing us on the trail and I'm just like, ugh, on the side
Oh,
of it.
yeah. This guy
It was
blasted by
terrible.
me. He goes, I moved aside to let him go, and he goes, thanks. But like the way he said it was like, thanks. And I was like, please don't throw up on me, sir. Like,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
slow down. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, that's a
no,
whole thing. But you're
it really
100%
is.
right. You're 100% right about you know, the injuries and how everything feels good in the moment. And that's such an important part of the let's call the problematic mindset that a lot of runners can have, where there is no limit to what you do as a runner. Like when you play team sports, and team sports have a cap on the a volume or the intensity or the length of time that you play a sport. Even the most intense sport in the world, the game only lasts a certain amount of time. But with running and these types of recreational activities that we take on as adults, you can do longer distances. You can do 2-a-days. You can do more intensity. You can add. There is absolutely no limit to the things that we can try and attempt and push our bodies to attempt in a way that we just don't have when it comes to team sports. And so I think that that's just part of the problem of, never really having to think about our training or kind of plan our own training sessions or understand that relationship between training and rest and recovery is that we go from playing sports where everything's very prescribed for us to being really on our own as adult runners. And, you need someone to rein you in and sort of pull you back a little bit.
Yeah, like 1000%, like having that person there to kind of pull you back, or have that expertise to know. And also, like, you're a teenager. I don't know, like, not all teenagers get away with it, but a lot of teenagers can get away with dumb shit and be fine. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but you're 33 now. Like, I'm sorry, that doesn't mean you're dead, and it doesn't mean you're like 80, but it maybe means you need to get your head out of your ass sometimes if you want to do this sport for longer. If you just want to drive
Yes.
your body into the ground, that's different. You do you. But
Yeah.
I
Oh,
personally would
totally.
like to be able to do this like later.
Totally, totally. So since you sort of have retaken up running and sort of gotten back into it in the last couple of years, have you participated in any races? Have you done any racing in the last few years?
I'm such a cop out. I have not yet. So I have one in my sights.
Okay.
I have wanted to do, it's called they're the Five Peaks Trail Running Series. I think they have it in Ontario as well, but there's one out here in BC. So there's a race at the end of September that I kind of set my sights on in the spring. There's like a shorter distance, I think it's like 5-6, and then there's like a 10-11. With my knee injury right now, I'm still like waffling about it, but I really think, like I was saying like to myself this morning, like I just need to register and see what happens. And like if I just have to go and like, do slow, whatever. It's funny, like I competed with basketball like through high school, did the regional, like was on the regional team, was in swim club for years, so raced with the swim club, did triathlons both as part of a team. And so it's like I'm not like unfamiliar with the world of competitive sports, but for some reason like going on a like running race seems so terrifying to me. And I think too, like for a while I had this fear that it would somehow like I'd like lose my enjoyment if I was
Interesting.
working towards that goal, which maybe that was just another like cop out in my brain. But what actually really made me change my mind and really want to do a race. So I have a twin sister. We used to do
I
everything
did not know
together.
that. I did
I
not know
know.
that. Oh my
I meant
gosh.
to say, I meant to mention this on our last call, and then I totally forgot. But
Okay.
yes, a twin. We're normal. We're great.
Fun. Oh my gosh.
I will tell you right now, my mother said that having us, which again, I don't know, my younger brother was like, she said my younger brother was more work than my sister and I combined. Because we like entertained each other. She
That's
would
what I
like put us
hear.
in our
That's what
car
I hear.
seats and like we'd like chat to each other. So anyway, not
Yes.
to go down the twin road.
Yeah. Well, for anybody who's listening doesn't know that I am currently expecting a set of twins, and so that's why this is very timely and very funny.
Yes. Yeah. So surprise.
Yeah.
I'm one of them.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So we played sports together. Like we played basketball together, we swam together, all that jazz. But she has been running longer than I have.
Okay.
She probably started a year or two before pandemic. She had signed up for the Squamish 50-kilometer race in 2020. So then 2020, of course, did not happen. And then 2021, she, I think, decided to skip it because they had to push it, which thank God she did, because they ran it in an atmospheric river, which was just like water up to people's knees. On like, I don't know how that's how you make running a 50-kilometer even worse than it already was going to be.
Yeah.
So she ran it last year though. And so we went up and like I did her drop bag, and it was just it's so stupid, but it's like, it's just the environment. And I was like, maybe I could do this one day. Like, maybe I do want to
Yeah.
race or like,
Yeah. Yeah.
get into this a little bit more. And I think trail races appeal to me a little bit more. Road races scare me. I don't know. It just seems so much more intense. Not that trail running
Yeah.
isn't. Like running 50 kilometers through the woods is obviously very intense. But
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, so, and that was actually partly why I had decided to reach out to you, is because I knew, like, get my shit together, do the thing.
Yeah. And I
So
love that.
TBD.
Yeah, and I love that you say that because, so many people don't feel like they can identify as a runner unless they are racing. Right? Like there are so
For
many
sure,
people
that's in the back
who
of my head too.
yeah, and we need to really break that mindset of you're only valuable as a runner, I guess I'll say, or only worth coaching or working with someone on your nutrition or on how you run. Like all of this is only worthwhile and, beneficial if you race. Because there are so many people who don't race that, still need to stay injury free, still need to fuel their bodies properly for the amount of running that they're doing. And whether at some point in time you want to or are able to race or not doesn't make you less of a runner or less worthy of approaching this in a really smart and healthy way. It's just something that I think we get in our heads about that, like, oh, but if I'm not racing, then like, what am I even doing?
1000%. Like, I definitely like keep getting in my head about it. And like, I think even before I was really like, I feel like I'm ready now. Like,
Mm,
maybe not like my knees being a little bit of a jerk, but like working with physio on that, and that's fine. But I think, yeah, before I was trying to push something that I just like really wasn't ready for, but it was
mm,
like, well, there's no point in like talking to Steph. There's no point in reaching out, getting a dietitian if you're not racing, if you're not running like
yeah.
15-kilometer at least long runs. And I was like, finally, like, no, that's stupid. Like, stop.
Yeah. And I think you could say the same thing for a lot of people who feel like if they're not this sort of elite level athlete, somebody who is, in that top 1% of finish times and this really high level athlete, that it's also maybe not worth it or sort of, how am I going to find somebody who wants to help me who's finishing a half marathon in 3 hours? Like, I think there's also a lot of questions around whether or not it's worth it for somebody to hire someone and work with someone on nutrition if they're not a fast runner or a good runner or a talented runner or like whatever, kind of labels we want to put on these things. So on that note, that's kind of the next question that I wanted to get into here, which is a beautiful segue. When did you decide that it was time to start working with someone? What kind of moved the needle for you to get out of your head about questioning whether or not it was worth it or whether or not you should, and finally kind of, you know, book that discovery call and pull the trigger?
So for me, like, I started following like a lot of dietitians on Instagram.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm the kind of person who definitely can be a little picky about like who I follow. And it's not necessarily about like what they're saying, but I just like vibe with certain people more,
Hmm.
whether or not I'm actually interacting with them. It's all in my own
Yes.
head.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so I actually started following you after I started listening to the Running Explained podcast. And so I'd like skipped around a bit. I'd listened to both of your first two episodes. And then the third one you did was injury prevention and injury recovery, I think, like nutrition for that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Forget exactly what you guys were talking about, but I essentially felt extremely called out. Like it was essentially like, just talk to someone. Like,
Sure.
maybe this is
Sure.
something you need to talk to someone about. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, fine. And because I had started following you already, like I felt like, yeah, this is someone like I can get along with. And it's hard. I feel like you don't want to talk to someone who's going to just agree with everything you say, but you do want to talk to someone who like you kind of vibe with, because
Oh, yeah. So
I
important.
don't
So
want to end
important.
up like being stuck in like however many sessions with someone that like, I don't know, people who don't like get my jokes. It's like, then it's just awkward.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that Running Explained podcast. And I was like, okay, it might be time.
Yeah, fair enough. So it was the specific content and sort of like feeling like that was speaking to the issues that you had actually been dealing with and really highlighting some of the things that you knew were struggles for you, but then also showing that there was like a solution to the problem. And that's part of this whole journey that we have to go through when we are trying to fix something, whatever that might be in our lives, is, to be aware that we do in fact have a problem, but then also to see that there's an answer and a solution to the problem. There's kind of these steps that have to happen.
And also for me, like kind of going back to like, never thought about my weight, never thought about any of that, never worried about it. It's like all well and good to grow up a tall, skinny girl. But at some point when you get older, I'm not like 100, but you get to a point where, yeah, like I felt like I was putting on weight and I did notice myself like slipping into like I know better. Like I follow dietitians. Like I am not someone who like normally would fall for like and we've talked about like it was in a maintenance phase. It's like I'm not stupid. Like I know a lot of this shit doesn't work. But I caught myself like subconsciously just being like, I never told anyone. I never like told my partner like, oh, I'm just pushing breakfast like later and later. And I feel like it's when I really confronted that too that I was like, I was listening to your podcast or that episode of the podcast. I was listening, dealing with injuries. And I was like, yeah, this shit isn't working. like, and I think that finally, like, actually paying attention to what I was kind of not admitting to myself that I was doing. And nothing drastic. Like, I was never one of those, like, really dramatic, like, I can't not eat. Like, I would have immediately broken up with my partner. Like, he would have left me if I had stopped eating, like, fully. That was
Yeah.
never going to happen.
Yeah.
But still just those little habits that I noticed changing, like worrying about things I hadn't worried about before, thinking too much about other things. And I was like, okay, like you need to talk to someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. And that's so interesting because, when I, for me, like working in this field and in this specific kind of area of nutrition, I feel very surrounded by, what I would consider to be kind of positive nutrition messaging and eat more and you're under fueling and, you need to get in those carbs and hydrate. Like, my content and my algorithms, of course, show me more of that same content and stuff like that. But when you step outside the like dietitian bubble, it is incredible how much problematic stuff is perpetuated, not just, kind of diet culture as a whole, but even within the running community, how much really problematic diet and nutrition stuff and even training stuff you definitely see continue to be sort of pushed from some circles and in some parts of this. So it's not just about like, oh, I just need to follow some dietitians online and they're just going to fix me up right away. It just kind of ends up adding to the confusion when, yes, you scroll through Instagram for 5 minutes and you'll see maybe two dietitian posts that are telling you how much more you need to eat. But then the next post is somebody who just finished a 15-kilometer fasted workout and is posting about how great it was. And you're like, ah. And, it just kind of adds to that overwhelm that I think we all experience when we're trying to fix some of these like really deeply entrenched problems and things to do with how we feel about ourselves and, body image and all of that.
Yeah. And I think like even when you know better, like there's still like when you're in your like one of those moments where that anxiety is high or whatever, there's that like moment where you're like, well, let's just Google it, like just see what
Yeah.
it says. And it's like,
Yeah.
you're just gonna like reinforce what these people are saying, but like it's not. Like I don't know what is Healthline or whatever. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
like okay, but like
Yeah. Exactly. It's tough out there. I mean, yeah, you can Google anything and find someone to support anything that you want to believe. And if you keep scrolling long enough, you're gonna see everything. And I think what it comes down to is just having that one-on-one time to have that conversation, to say, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm thinking, this is how I'm feeling, and to get some feedback on what's going through your mind and your brain. Where am I going wrong and
yes.
what do I need to fix? And sort of lessons that you learned throughout your journey of getting more in touch with your nutrition as a runner.
I think for sure, like maybe like worrying, like not restricting for one thing, which like
Yeah.
again, I don't think that's like rocket science, but like having like you kind of reaffirm that, I think was huge. I think also like actually just taking away this idea that like people actually need a lot of food just to exist. Like that was big for me too. It's just like, yeah, you do still need to eat, like, especially even when you're injured, like if you're not running, like that kind of a thing. It's like, you do still need food. Uh,
Yeah.
so again, it's like not necessarily stuff that like I didn't know, but it just was so much more impactful for me to just have someone there to like reaffirm that in like an individual setting, as
Mhm.
opposed to just like kind of cobbling that together from like all the many resources on the internet. But yeah, I think like those were kind of some of my takeaways. Habit stacking was a huge takeaway actually for me.
Okay, tell us more
Do you
about
know
what
how
that
many
is.
times? Do you know how many times I've eaten an apple walking home from work? Yeah, so many
Okay,
times.
tell us what habit stacking is.
Oh God. Well, habit stacking, as Steph tells you, is when you take a habit you already have and just like add another little habit on top of that. So that the thing you're doing, you're like, oh yeah, do this other thing. Instead of doing what I was doing, which is just trying to like reorganize everything, which was definitely not working. So yeah, now my apples get eaten. I know when I walk out the door, my coworkers actually joke about it now.
That is
Um,
funny.
they see my apple beside my little
Yeah.
bag, ready to
Yeah.
go out the door. So now my apples get eaten instead of just
Yep.
going on a little trip to the office and back home again.
Yes. I okay, so shout out to my dietitian friend Michelle. I hope that you listen to this episode because Michelle, when we both used to work at the hospital together, we were both clinical dietitians at the same time a few years ago, and she would have her bag apple. That was her lunch bag apple that would come with her to work and go home with her. And I don't know what the record was for the most days that the same bag apple made an appearance. I'll have to find out. But
Yeah,
yes, just going on a
it's a
little field
thing.
trip.
I also had
Oh, that's so
multiple apples
funny.
take many field trips. I most recently took 2 apples on a field trip to Cape Breton. One made it all the way back home. I did eat one. The other one came home with me. Cape
Oh
went to
my
Cape Breton,
goodness.
came home from Cape Breton.
Oh my goodness. I
Yeah,
hope it
so
had
it's seen the
fun. I hope
world.
it did you take some photos of it like in different
I
spots,
should
like here and
have.
there on his little
I
field
barely
trip?
remembered it existed to eat it. Never mind actually taking on a little photo trip.
That's true.
But
That's
yes.
true. Yeah.
No, I was
So
just like, oh God.
and I remember in the beginning, you know, it was the meal timing and it was what you were eating and it was trying to fuel for the workouts that you were doing at various times of day and getting onto a more consistent schedule with your training as a whole. Like there was lots of pieces that we had to kind of move around and put together, not just with your eating habits and the what to eat when, but also with your training consistency and just the whole picture of it. And it was, some of those little takeaways, those little things of like, let's sort of fix this one thing. And how do we make that easy versus, okay, we have to like take your diet and we have to light it on fire and we have to make a new diet. It was really that evolution of those small changes. And this is something that everyone has heard 100,000 bajillion times. It's the small changes, the little baby steps. They add up over time. And I think we hear that repeated so much, just like you have to eat your fruits and vegetables. We hear it repeated and repeated and repeated. We start to tune it out and we start to almost just think of it as like, kind of lip service. But if you really think about those strategies and you really start to give them the attention and the time that they deserve, they are the things at the end of the day that work. It's just we hear
Yeah.
it so often that it starts to become background noise, I think.
Well, and I think my problem too, and you ended up like kind of pulling me back from this, is I went like, I had an issue with that in the first place. And so then we sorted that a little bit. Then I went so far the other direction where it's like, oh my God, I didn't eat 3 pieces of fruit today. Like, now what? Or like when I had that work trip and I was on the call with you and I was like, what am I going to do? Like, how do I like make sure I'm eating properly? And you were like, chill out. Like, like you need to do the small things, but it's like once those become a habit, it's not going to kill you if you don't have 3 pieces of fruit on a day because you're on a work trip. And so I think that was also huge for me, was like the small things. Definitely, I am definitely eating way more fruits and vegetables, but knowing that, when I'm in very much the middle of nowhere in Cape Breton and relying on other people's fridges and whatever's in their fridge, it's like it's okay if you don't get all the fruit that day. So I feel like, yeah, I went like one way and then I was like, wait, but now what? What if I
Yes.
die because I didn't eat this apple today? It's like, no, you're fine.
Yes, yes. And I think that that probably is really, really, kind of going to resonate with a lot of people, where as runners, we hold ourselves to a high standard. Like we're very type A personalities, and we have high expectations, and we want to do things perfectly, and we like rules, and we like plans, and we like structure, and like this is why we have training plans and we follow them. We do what we're told. Like this is
Stop
just,
shouting at me, Steph. God.
but this is just so much of just that runner's mentality. And this is where I think so many people end up stuck, is between like what's perfect in terms of a nutrition plan to follow, like what does a perfect plan look like, and then what is real life, and what does flexibility look like in being able to socialize and travel and miss a run here and there without that just completely like destroying you inside. Because that's where then we end up on that fast track to burnout and injuries, is when we can't give ourselves that give and take and that flexibility and that grace.
Yeah, it's that like obsession with all or nothing.
Oh,
It's like, well,
100%.
I can't eat fruit today, so I might as well just eat this cake and be done.
And the whole cake, like all the cake,
Yeah.
not just like a piece of cake, but like the entire thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that that all or nothing mindset is probably the number one, issue that I encounter in the people that I work with, is sort of undoing some of that all or nothing thinking, so that long term you take these lessons about nutrition and a smarter approach to training, and you can just implement it long term, because you know that you've got so much flexibility already allowed in your lifestyle.
Hmm.
So let's talk results. Out of the time that you've spent working on this, and kind of the time since we've wrapped up our sessions together, what were some of the results, or the things that got you most excited? What did you see happening for you that really made you think that, like, yeah, I'm on the right track with this?
I feel like I'm less stressed about eating again. Like, I feel
Love
like
that.
I'm never going to go back to, like, high school me, like where I literally don't think about eating. Partly because I have to feed myself now. Shout out to my partner who actually feeds me most of the time. Um, but, like, you actually have to think of your own freaking meals all the time, every day until you die. Good Lord. Um,
Gotta love being a grown up. Oh my goodness.
yeah, it's super my favorite. But I think being a little less stressed about what I eat. I think my partner still would think I'm probably a little stressy, but he also just, I think we just eat whatever and be fine. I'm like,
Yep.
no, I need a vegetable. I'm so sorry.
Yep.
But yeah, so I definitely feel like that has been huge for me. Um, and just eating like more fruit and vegetables again. Like I'd forgotten that like I do actually really like it. I don't know. I guess I just like stopped bothering. Not completely, but it was like I have vegetables with dinner. That's when you have your vegetables. Or like, you have fruit with breakfast and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's been something as well that's been huge for me.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
then for a lot of
mostly not the
people,
worrying has been huge.
yeah, and then for a lot of people, when, when we drop breakfast, right, with all the fasting and the low carb, and whatever else has been really popular at the moment, that's a time when people would have probably gotten in a pretty healthy, balanced meal. You drop that, now there's this less opportunity for us to be able to get in those nutritious foods that we so
Mhm.
badly need.
Yeah, and I get why people like would drop breakfast of all the meals. A, because I feel like that's what ends up happening when people talk about fasting, which makes me crazy. But
Yeah.
B, because it's like, yeah, some mornings when I'm like making my stupid eggs and my stupid toast, and Chris is just like sitting on the couch having his coffee, like enjoying his morning. And I'm like, yeah, I want to just sit on the couch and have my tea and it's like hardly, that big of a deal to make your breakfast. But like, I don't know, either you're busy because you're running out the door to work, or you just want to like relax and have a nice morning. Have someone else bring you your breakfast.
Yes. So really the solution to all of your problems is to have a personal chef who is
Yes,
going to come and make all of your meals for you, and then easy
this is what
peasy,
I'm
right?
saying. And I
Yeah.
can't even complain because I essentially do have that for dinner, but I just have to feed myself breakfast. Good Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, how horrible.
The worst.
Yeah. So going into this whole process, what was the most surprising thing that you started doing differently, or the most kind of surprising thing that you learned that you really weren't expecting when you kind of first reached out to start working together?
This is a hard one too, because like I wouldn't say anything was like hugely surprising to me because I have lurked for so
Hmm.
long. Like I spent so long just being that weirdo lurking on like people's like dietitian pages.
Yeah.
But I honestly think just like how much simpler it can be was
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's part of the problem when you spend like a year lurking on all these different dietitians pages, like just seeing these little snapshots and like that's great and I love that. But it's like my Instagram now has a folder of just all these saved posts that like I haven't gone back to. They're just there. They just
Yeah.
exist. And
Yeah.
so it's like kind of having it distilled down. I think, yeah, the most surprising thing was that like, oh, it can be fairly simple if
Mm-hmm.
you
I
let
love
it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that lesson. That's a great one. And so for other runners who are currently where you were, getting lots of issues with injuries, who were having difficulty with, consistency with their training and kind of getting going with things, just feeling a bit blah about their running and their eating, what advice do you have for people who were where you were 6 months ago?
Just actually talk to someone. Like find someone
Stop
and like
lurking.
yeah. Like if you have to spend a little time lurking around, fine. But just know that like that shouldn't be your like forever thing. And again, I totally get
Hmm.
it. Like it's not always cheap to get a dietitian. It's like therapy. It's like, yeah, maybe it should be available for everyone, but like unfortunately it's not always. But just maybe make it a priority. Check your benefits. Benefits might cover it. Like
Yep.
always. And if yours don't, check a significant other, like see if theirs do. But yeah, like I'd say find someone you like and just talk to someone. And even if you like, I feel like so many people think they know everything. Even if they do know everything, it's like there's a reason run coaches have coaches. And I feel like there's a reason some dietitians talk to other dietitians.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, I feel like you just need to step outside yourself sometimes. And
Absolutely.
I don't know, my partner, when I said I was going to do this, like sign up and like did the consult with you and was like, yeah, let's do it. He was like, what are you going to do if you get in there and after everything, she just tells you everything you already knew? And I was like, yeah, that'd be fine. Because like I knew there was just going to be, and for the record, you didn't tell me everything I already knew. You told me a lot of things I already knew, but like I don't know, it's so much better and different when someone without any perspective on your life or like previous thoughts about your life making you sound like a therapist, but like I feel like there's a little bit of that too, can step in and just like look at photos of what you're eating, listen to what you're doing and be like yes and or no, like these are ways that I can help. I just think that's super valuable, and I think people often rely on like friends and family to kind of talk at them or like kind of fall into that trap of just, oh, well, I'm just going to talk to these people about it. It's, yeah, but like, are they a dietitian? Or are they just going to tell you like their weird little hack that like maybe works for them, but like isn't always going to work for you? Yeah, I don't know. Just talk to someone. Just do it. Just
Yeah,
get your
for
head out of
sure.
your
And
ass and do it.
yeah, and I think too, like, if you look at the opportunities that we have now in the online education space, it doesn't have to be necessarily this really big financial commitment to do a whole bunch of one-on-one services if that just isn't in the cards for a lot of people. I mean, even for me, like I've got an online group program that people still have the option of getting some one-on-one time and getting their questions answered and stuff like that when they need it, but you're getting the benefit of being able to access, content and modules and stuff like that isn't as easy to put out there on Instagram, for example, which is so very, very snapshotty. So I think that's great
Yeah.
advice of just, find someone that you vibe with, find someone that you think you would like to work with as kind of a human being and as a person that kind of meshes with your personality and what you're looking to get out of the whole consultation. But then just do it already. just take the step
Yeah.
and book the call and get the help that you're looking for.
Like there's never going to be like a perfect time. Like I signed up with you when I was feeling really good and like everything was on track and I was like, I'm ready. And then like I injured myself like 2 weeks before our first call or something. And you were like, how much have you been running? I was like, haha, not at all. So like, I mean, it was fine. Like there was still so much I got out of it, but yeah, it's never going to be the perfect time.
Yeah, for sure. And the lessons that you learn and kind of the strategies and approaches that you get as you're training, volumes change, intensities change, you go through a race cycle, get out of a race cycle, whatever that looks like, you've got now that knowledge and education to be able to adapt what you're doing to the volumes that you're running without it being like, I have no idea how to eat if I'm not running the same miles per week that I was when I first sat down with this dietitian and started working on things.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That was always my worry too. It was like, well, what if we talk now? And then like I'm running more and I'm like, oh God, what do I eat? It's like, no, you're fine. Like you
Yeah.
have
You'll
the
you'll
basics.
get what you need. You'll understand it.
Yeah. I just wanted to say quickly, I had this fear too, like we talked about, of not being like a enough runner to do the thing. I remember once I had tried to go like to this new therapist because I was like, the previous times I've been to therapy, it had been like in crisis. And I was like, pandemic was happening, like life stuff was happening, layoffs were happening for my partner and all this stuff. Maybe you should try and see a therapist before the shit hits the fan. So I had a consult and I kind of explained that a little bit. She's like, okay, so what do you need from me then? Like with this look of like, you seem fine. Like you're running, you're doing stuff. Like, what do you need from me? And I was like, never
Oh,
mind.
wow.
And so I think
Okay.
like that also can be like, that was like the fear manifested. So it's like,
Sure. I
what if
get
I
that.
get on? She's like, well, what do you need from me? Like, you're barely running. It's like, okay. Which, like, for the
Yeah.
record, did not happen and like
Yeah.
shouldn't happen. Also, if someone says that to you, maybe they're not the right dietitian for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's why, having those conversations and, just being able to share, but also like as a professional, there's a nicer way to maybe say to someone like, hey, you know what, like maybe we're not the best fit versus
Slightly.
you're fine. What are you whining about?
Yeah, for sure. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, sorry. Sorry to
Yeah.
waste your time, ma'am.
And I'll say for the record too that there are runners that I talk to, that I work with, who there isn't always a ton of changes necessarily that we need to make, but sometimes just getting that reassurance that you are in fact on the right track and the things that you think you should do are in fact the things that you should be doing. I think there's also a lot of value in getting that confirmation. I can think of a number of people that I've worked with where, coming in, I don't have like, we're not making this big 180 to their eating plan, and they don't have to double their calories and start adding in all these extra carbs and just make these big crazy changes to what they're currently doing. But at least now they have peace of mind that when they are looking at information online, it's not, well, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? I don't know. What's the right answer? Who do I trust? Who do I listen to? It's just like, yep, okay, you've got the stamp of approval. And
Yeah.
now you can get on with your life and stop spending so much time worrying about food.
That was definitely a large part for me, for sure. Was like that, just needing that, like, yeah, you're doing the thing, you're okay. Like it's
Yeah,
it's fine. Do a little of this, do a little of that, like you will be okay. It's like
exactly.
I feel like when you don't talk to someone face to face directly, it's like when you're trying to figure out like rate of perceived effort. It's like, oh, you're zone 2, but like it's like your rate of perceived effort. This is the way you tell. I was like, but is it? I don't know. Like
Yeah,
my heart rate says one thing, but I feel this thing. So like I feel like sometimes until you have that direct conversation, it's hard. Send an
Absolutely.
IMO.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Hey, Nanaimo, what's
I'll,
up?
yes. Yeah. For any of my one-on-one clients, anyone who's been on a Zoom call with me knows that my cat always likes to make an appearance and come hang out on the Zoom. All right. So thank you so much, Laura, for sharing your insight and your humor and all of your great stories with us today. I really appreciate you coming and spending some time, even though I know it was a little anxiety provoking for you
Oh, just a little
to
bit. Just like
agree.
2 o'clock today, I was like, oh no, what have I done?
I have so many regrets. No, this was wonderful.
It was great.
I think that people are going to get a lot from hearing your story, and it's going to resonate with a lot of people. Before we sign off, is there anything else that you want to share? Any like final thoughts or things that you think people should know?
I think just you can take the apple on a few trips, but you should definitely eventually eat the apple.
Okay.
That's
Great
all I got.
advice. Great advice. All right. Well, best of luck with your possible upcoming race. I hope that your injuries heal up and you get the confidence you need to just sign up and just like eating the apple, just do the damn thing, right?
Ouch. Yeah, okay, fair.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
No
And I hope that
worries.
everybody listening had a good time listening to this episode and really enjoyed all of Laura's thoughts and laughed along.
I'm hilarious. What can I say?
The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.